Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Aaron Hilliard from Mushroom Wonderland. I'm the creator of Mushroom Wonderland here on YouTube and on Instagram. I'm also the vice president of the Kitsap Peninsula Mycological Society, and I've just been a forager of mushrooms for many, many years. So on this channel, we talk all about mushrooms. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, give a thumbs up, leave a positive comment, kind of helps the channel to grow. We're on the Kitsap Peninsula of Washington State, and we're gonna take a foray here in the spring, in the beginning of April, to see what kind of mushrooms are growing out here. It's been raining quite a bit. The temperature is about 55 to 60 in the daytime, which is ideal temperatures for mushrooms. But a lot of mushrooms around here are seasonal, so there's certain mushrooms that come out in the spring that we don't see in the fall, and there's certain mushrooms that come out in the fall that we're not gonna see right now. But come with me on a walk into the forest and let's go see what kind of mushrooms are growing out here right now in April of 2022, spring foraging. Thanks for joining, much love, come on. All right, so we got some interesting mushrooms right here. These are pretty big, pretty hardy, and they're growing right here in these conifer bark wood chips. And here I just picked one, and if I look underneath, it's got this kind of brown colored gills. The top is kind of cream colored, sort of more tan in the center, and they're a little bit wavy. This one's known as Agrocybe praecox, or the spring field cap. And so this mushroom is pretty abundant around here in the spring, and likes to grow in wood chips and stuff like this. This mushroom is edible, although it is said to be very bitter. I've never personally eaten it, but it grows in pretty big quantities here in the spring. So you could definitely go out and forage some of these and try to eat them if you want, although I think they're probably pretty gross. So the Agrocybe praecox, as it gets a little bit drier, one of the characteristics is it's going to be all cracked on the cap with white little lines going through it. And you'll see these growing in flower beds and yards, in landscaping, all over the place. And if you look at that little baby, it's got a beautiful little ring on it, and the ring just totally disappears as they get older. So pretty common one. This one's growing all over in lawns and flower beds and stuff like that. The spring field cap, or the Agrocybe praecox, lots of different looks to this mushroom. So would you take a look at this mushroom here? This is called the Gyromitras esculenta. This is a really weird, wavy looking mushroom. Let me pick this guy. Wow, this is a big one. But this is a poisonous mushroom, a false morel. So it's called a Gyromitras esculenta. So the Gyromitras esculenta, this mushroom's super common around here in the spring. And esculenta, the ancient Greek word for that actually means edible, although this is far from edible. So these are actually deadly poisonous if you were to ingest enough of them, or even to inhale a lot of the spores from this mushroom could make you really sick. There's acute sickness, and then there's long-term sickness attributed to the gyromitrin in this mushroom. So when it metabolizes in the human system, it becomes a substance called monomethylhydrazine, which is effectively rocket fuel, which is not good to have in your system. So the Gyromitras esculenta, even though it's called the false morel, I've even heard it called the beefsteak morel. What a stupid name for a poisonous mushroom, because a beefsteak morel sounds like the best morel out there, if you ask me. Pretty large one. So avoid this one. Do not eat this, and probably not even a good idea to collect it and have it in your basket. It's just got a lot of toxins. So I'm going to set this one down. It's okay to handle them, but I would avoid being in enclosed spaces with this, or if you were trying to cook it for any reason, and inhaling the fumes can even make you sick. So the Gyromitras esculenta, we're going to leave this behind, and we see these growing all over. Really, really common spring mushroom in the PNW. All right, so we got these little mushrooms growing right here on the stump. This tree was cut off probably a few years ago, so this fungus is chewing the inside of this tree away, and then it's forming these little fruiting bodies on the outside of the tree to disperse some spores off into the wind. So this looks a lot like a turkey tail, but being that this is coniferous wood, this is not in the genus Trametes, which is a hardwood loving saprotroph. This is also saprotrophic, it's eating the dead wood. But this one is known as Trichaptum, or Trichaptum abiatinum. This one is not known to be medicinal or anything special like that. And one of the characteristics of the Trichaptum is it often gets a lot of algae growth on it, so they turn green even when they're still producing spores. But these ones are actually pretty fresh. But I don't know, you could probably put them in tea. I'm sure they wouldn't harm you. But this is the coniferous turkey tail here in the PNW. All right, so growing right off the end of this log here is another conch mushroom. It's one of these brown rot decayers, so it's eating this coniferous log that's here. But this is a common one in the winter. This actually made it into one of the ID videos a couple of months ago. So it looks like it could be related to the red-belted conch, but it's actually in a different genus. This is in the genus Rhodophomys. So this is Rhodophomys cayenderi. This is the Rosy Conch. Beautiful brown rot decayer, and so these like to grow in the winter, and in the spring here in the PNW they get this beautiful kind of purpley pink hue to them, and they're not really of any use to humans that I know of, but they do a good job out here in the woods breaking down the decaying coniferous wood and sending it back into the forest floor. So Rhodophomys cayenderi, or the Rosy Conch. Here I've come across this beautiful flush of fungus growing on this dead stump in this mixed conifer forest. It has thousands of these delicate white mushrooms growing directly off the dead wood of what appears to be a deciduous stump. It's probably a red alder. These are what are commonly known as fairy parachutes, or by the scientific name Marasmiellus candidatus. This is a fairly common saprotrophic mushroom growing from late fall through the spring here, and it is a relative of the common fairy ring mushroom that grows in lawns and meadows. Keep in mind, this impressive flush of fruiting bodies is just the reproductive parts of this fungus. The real body of this mushroom exists inside of the dead wood as a mass of hyphae or spiderweb-like hairs called the mycelium, although many spores are undoubtedly trapped inside this mycelial mat of moldy-looking webbing. The sheer number of fruiting bodies ensures that billions of spores are being sent across the forest with every gust of wind. I'm always impressed when I come upon a flush of these very beautiful fairy parachutes, or Marasmiellus candidatus. Very likely place to find chanterelles in the fall. As we look right down here, would you look at that? We have beautiful species of Morel, Morchella growing right here. And then if I look over here, it looks like one got a little damage, the cap broke off, but a couple more small Morels here. They're really kind of contorted here in their folds, and I'm not sure exactly which species these are, but If you look, it's got definitely got a hollow stem, and the cap and the stem are fused together. So these are true morels. You don't have to necessarily go to Eastern Washington or to the fires to find them, although I don't usually find them in any huge abundance here, but nevertheless, kind of a surprising find and always a welcome find. So I'm definitely gonna scout around in this area some more. Go get your morels. They're growing right now. Got this baby right at the base. Beautiful mushroom. Wow, so what I've come across here, these are some very beautiful and pretty common mushrooms that grow in the spring. They love to grow in large troops around rotting stumps like this. They're in the family of the Mica Cap mushrooms because after a relatively short lifespan, the mushrooms will liquefy or deliquesce into a goopy black ink. This particular Mica Cap is known as the Mica Cap or Copernellus micaceus. They have these tiny little glittery gems on the younger honey-colored caps that can reflect light, kind of like mica. This is an edible mushroom and it's good to use in soups, but it's fragile and delicate and it's easily overpowered by stronger flavors, although the cooking process will stop the deliquescence process. A relative of this mushroom contains toxins that interact violently when ingested with alcohol, copryne, which is the active ingredient in antabuse, but this particular one here is safe to eat. These mushrooms were actually in the same genus as the shaggy mane or Coprinus comatus. These used to be called Coprinus micaceus, but genetic testing showed that these were not actually the same family at all. This is another one of the amazing mushrooms that are making a living just breaking down the dead wood in the forest. It's quite beautiful while they do it, and you could collect these to eat. So a beautiful one here, Copernellus micaceus or the Mica Cap. Well, this is a fungus you don't see every day, or maybe you've never seen one at all. That's because they grow underground and are rarely unearthed unless by a hungry animal. This is known as a deer truffle or Elaphomyces granulatus. The name comes from elaph, meaning deer, and myces, meaning fungus. The species name granulatus is pretty generically used throughout the world to describe the deer truffle, in reference to the granular warts on the outer rind. They have a detrimental relationship with these trees like so many other mushrooms. They are usually buried under an inch or two of needle duff under these Douglas fir trees. Deer truffles are among the most elusive fungus in the world. I got fortunate to spot this one that wasn't completely covered. These truffles are known as false truffles. They are not directly related to the highly prized black or white truffles, which are true truffles. Squirrels around here especially love eating these, and you can see little holes along the sides of the trails where the squirrels dig them out. Humans can also eat these at this stage, but I guess they're very unpleasant and very bitter, and they will soon turn into powdery spores that are most certainly inedible, so probably one just to avoid. As the spores mature, many animals are attracted to these by the scent, just like real truffles. Pretty cool to see this and let you all see a fresh Elaphomyces granulatus or a deer truffle. Pretty little mushroom. Wow, would you look at these mushrooms here? Not too exciting at the first glance, but when you pull it out of the ground, you'll find this massive tangle of rhizomorphs at the base of the stipe. This is quite unique and a bit rare to find these, in these parts anyways. The rhizomorphs here look like the roots on a plant, although mushrooms are actually genetically closer to animals than they are to plants. These hairs do not serve the same purpose as roots on a plant, because the roots of a plant are very much a part of the vegetative part of the plant, while these here are simply the connections from the body of the fungus to its reproductive sexual organ, the mushroom. It's more like the stem on an apple than the roots of an apple tree. Rhizocity only has a few species, and these rhizomes are the main indicator of that genus. I'm not sure which species this is, if it in fact even has a name or it's been described before. They're very much Cleidocybe-like, with subdecurrent gills and a concave, almost funnel-like cap. I suppose we could call this Rhizocity Philophila. It's close enough to the poisonous Cleidocybe Philophila that I would avoid trying to eat this, even though there's only two, and they're tiny, and they're very rare. This log looks oddly out of place in this landscape because it's the only thing out here that is blue like this. I'm not sure if you've seen something like this, a blue twig or a log in the forest, but this is actually caused by a fungus. The fungus responsible for this is commonly known as the blue-green elf cup, and the scientific name is Chlorociboria aeruginaceans. It's my opinion that it could use a new common name because the bluish-green elf cups are actually really rarely seen, and the discoloration of the wood is the most obvious thing about this mushroom. The mycelium creates an enzyme that changes the color of the wood to a blue-green, and this log is a fine example of what it looks like. People have salvaged this wood for centuries to make trinkets and various other woodworking projects from the colored wood. It has been prized in Italy for over 1,000 years as far as we know, perhaps longer than that. I got lucky to find this log that actually has fruiting bodies growing underneath it, which I don't see very often. I will often collect it for my own little woodworking projects, but I just don't have the means to take this one with me today. So thanks for joining Mushroom Wonderland. I hope you got some value out of that video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button and leave a positive comment, and we will see you on the next episode. So take care, everybody. Much love.